Okay. We are live on Facebook, and I want to say good evening. It's 8 o'clock, so that's evening, right?
Correct. Or you can say buenas noches.
Buenas noches. Um, what's French?
Oh,
Bonsoir.
lost me.
Bonsoir.
I
Um,
see.
yeah. So
Michelle.
when I do, how would I do? Anybody? When I do with me today?
Okay, I dare with you. Okay.
Hey, you there with me? Okay, you there with me. So we talk here today. When I know when I you sorry, hey, we apologize,
Hey, sorry, oh. Well,
we
how
need
could do?
forgiveness, yeah, we big. So let's stop messing around. But anyway, thank you everyone for joining us tonight on this special chat. My girl Jojo will be joining us back on Wednesday when we have our special guest, Robin Donaldson, and you are going to love Robin. You are going to love what she has to say about all the stuff happening in Georgia and around the country with Jim Crow 2.0. Tonight, we are going to have a conversation about this Chauvin murder trial that's happening. Not George Floyd murder trial, the Chauvin murder trial, because he did the act and he's the one on trial. But before we get into all that, my name is Fatmata. I am one of the admins and co-hosts of this live chat, fireside chat on Black Diaspora Voices. And today I want to introduce you to, well, you've seen her before. She's been here before, but for those of you who haven't, this is my sister, Rabiatu Barrie, PhD psychologist, who will be here to talk with me today. Can you introduce yourself, please, my dear?
Hi, good evening. Rabiatu Berry, as she said, I'm an assistant professor of clinical psychology at Adler University in Chicago. And my work is all about Black people and racism and coping with racism. And Black identity. So this is my zhuzh that I talk about all day, every day. So yeah.
So she's the perfect person for me to have this conversation with. Okay. And but before we get started, what we always want to do before we get going is to have a moment of silence for those we have lost during this pandemic, and I also want to have a moment of silence for the senseless deaths going on around this country, from Chicago to California to Georgia, all these shootings that are continuously happening, to here in my own hometown of Montgomery County, where we just had an off-duty Pentagon officer shoot two Black men in Tacoma Park, apparently as they were fleeing in a stolen car. There's now a death sentence to steal a car. We'll get back to that. So if we can have a moment of silence, please, for the families of those we have lost and for those we have lost, and for these witnesses that have been testifying in this Chauvin murder trial. And pray for them and hope and pray that they're able to get rid of the guilt they feel, and hope that they're able to remove the trauma that they have going in them. So give us a few moments of your time. All right. So we are here today to talk about the Chauvin trial. It has been going on now for, 5 days last week, and what, 3?
Day 8.
How many?
Day 8.
Today's day, it was day 8. Okay. Now we've heard all types of testimonies. We have relived the video, the live murder of Mr. George Floyd. And, as I was watching it, I could feel, especially this first couple of days, I was literally crying watching this and listening to the young ladies talk about what they saw, listening to them talk about how guilty they felt, that they couldn't do more, listening to witnesses, listening to the gentleman, his name escapes me now,
Donald Williams.
the older gentleman who was crying.
His name is also Mr. Williams.
Yeah,
He was 61 years old.
Mr. McCask, I can't remember his name, had to put his head on the table as he was crying. And that broke me. He broke me that day. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't. This man just is breaking my heart. And all I could think was, if I was that affected, right? How are the families feeling? George Floyd's family, those little babies, the teenagers and the little 9-year-old, how are they feeling? How are their families feeling? And what effect this is happening on our Black community as a whole, on the kids, on the adults. And, you know, we all have our opinions, but I really wanted this group, which is for us as Black people, by us as Black people from all walks of earth, to get it from a professional who can sort of give us an idea, because you have worked a lot with young Black people, especially young Black men, right?
Right.
And you've done all these studies, all these programs, and I want you to tell us what you think the effect of having this trial, we need to have it obviously, but the effect of having this trial be seen again and listening to the testimonies, what you see and think is happening and how it's affecting the Black community as a whole.
So a few things. I think half of us probably aren't watching it, if I'm being honest. And that's people's coping mechanism. A lot of people aren't watching the trial. They kind of just take in updates because it's about all that they can tolerate. It's more like sound bites of what happened because they can't keep up with the trial during the day. One, obviously people are at work, and two, because people can't tolerate it. Personally, I've listened, but I haven't watched. So like every time they showed the video, I would mute it and kind of like look away until it was over. And then I would turn it back on and listen to testimony, but I refuse to listen to the videos or watch the video. I still haven't seen it. I've caught glimpses of the stills, which was enough for me. So I know I don't need to necessarily watch the videos. And so I think what took place is the traumatization that took place in May, right? So for about 45 days, on an unending cycle, we watched George Floyd die. Like they played it every day on the news. And then people took to the streets, and there was trauma there in the sense of being re-traumatized individually by the police going out into the world. I had clients and students alike come and say, like, random white people were screaming at them in the streets. Like, I had a student say she was walking her dog and a white man walked up to her and was like, you know, tell your people to stop destroying the property. She was like, what? It happened to my line sister in Georgia. A white lady walked up to her when she was running in Stone Mountain and said to her, you know, this is not what your people are doing isn't going to help. You guys have to stop this. Right. So Black people were getting kind of attacked, like in the world, in addition to having to see that thing on real. And so I think we got a little bit of a lull. And now the trial is back. And one, it brings back all of those memories. And then we're watching in real time how, even though the case looks like it's going in the prosecution's favor, it really just brings up memories of justice in America, right? Where Emmett Till's killers were known. Everybody knew that they did it and they set them free, right? And we have a whole host. It is Rodney King and LAB, watched them beat that man basically almost to death. They got off, right? So really the hard part is, I don't think, not even necessarily watching it, but knowing that it might not matter. And everybody holding their breath like, I mean, we all see what we see, but this is also still America. And so then what does that mean? Is to think of a justice system that doesn't work for us. That even in what's going on some level, you can have appreciation for the American justice system in the sense that like Derek Chauvin is getting a fair trial. He's got an attorney that's really fighting for his life and fighting for him by picking up any possible thing he could pick up on to prove give some reasonable doubt, right? But the problem is that justice, our justice in America, is not blind, right? It's only blind for white people, particularly white men. And so I think that is also even the most traumatizing part, is that you're watching it over and over again, and there is a very sinking feeling that it's just as likely that he'll be acquitted as it is he'll be convicted. And I think that actually is the most painful part, thinking about history and history always repeating itself in this country and playing itself out, that police officers are above the law. And then even in the testimonies, right, where now the defense attorney is blaming the 9-year-old, blaming the Black man, blaming Donald Williams, blaming the older Black man, blaming the 17-year-old young lady, blaming the white female EMT, but blaming all these people who were in defense of George Floyd for his actions. So you're now saying we're responsible for our own death and demise because they were pleading for his life, right? He even tried to insinuate that like that they were aggressive and like the man was trying to hold Donald Williams back. It was like, he was like touching his arm. I don't know if Donald Williams, who does 20 years of like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, wanted to get out of that grip. I'm positive he could have, right? And we see Officer Tao standing there in his stance and telling all of them to stay on the curb, and they did. Like nobody disobeyed the command. And why would they when they're watching you kill someone? Like, why would they disobey the command? We're literally watching you kill somebody. And so it's definitely a re-traumatizing thing, and we vicariously traumatize each other, right? So every single day I've had to respond to texts from friends like, are you watching this foolishness, right? And so we pass our trauma along because that's how we cope. We're a collective community and we find support in each other, and so we keep reporting the things to each other and re-traumatizing each other, right? So just like the man, the older gentleman that you mentioned, when he started bawling, like all I saw was 61 years of Black man trauma pour out on that. He wasn't just crying for George Floyd. He was crying for himself. He was crying for his brothers. He was crying for his daddy. He was crying for his friends, right? Because like he said, he's had contact with the police. He was begging George Floyd, like, bro, we're like, you can't beat the police. You can't beat the police, right? And what a interesting foreshadowing that 5 days before that, he saw Derek Chauvin patrolling the neighborhood and said to him, when you're doing this work, make sure you go home safe, but also make sure the next man gets to go home safely. And 5 days later, you took somebody's father, somebody's brother, nonchalantly, didn't feel a thing, just put your whole 220 pounds on this man's neck for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So it's a historical generational trauma that we're experiencing. It's in the moment vicarious trauma by watching it on television. And it's a systemic and interpersonal trauma of your own memories of yourself, right? All of the things that man was feeling on that witness stand is something we all felt. We all felt it. And it plays out in our lives, right? We think about it all the time. It's like Black people don't call the police on each other because it's like, well, I'm not about to call the police and have them come up here and beat these kids up for something small. So things that, the people we should be able to call to help keep order in a safe way, we can't even call them. Because something that's as small as, okay, it's 12 o'clock at night, y'all disperse, playing music loud. We can't call you. If we call you, might kill them. So now we just got to suffer because we can't call the police. Women who are being abused by their partners won't call the police because they don't want him to get killed. So they take the beating, right? So they're protect and serve. They're not really protecting and serving, which we knew anyway. But there's these reverberations that reverberate through the community because of their actions and the mistrust and abuse from them to us. And so we just don't We're gonna rock with them because they're slave catchers. That is how they began, and that is what they are now. They're here to capture the enslaved. And even though we are free, not in their eyes, and their goal is to enslave us because the 13th Amendment says basically once you become part of the penal system, you become a slave again. So here we are. So that
Wow.
was a very long-winded answer.
No, it was a great answer. It was a really great answer. And it went straight to the heart of it. And for me, one of the things that struck me was, and as an attorney, obviously you have to present or represent your client to the best of your ability. And you have to ensure that you put forth an argument that is geared towards getting the results that's beneficial to your client.
Mhm.
But again, what I found was the othering of the people watching, of the observers, of the witnesses, and people standing around. And every Black person that was up there that they called on as a witness, the defense's questions was always, were you not angry? You were angry, weren't you? You were very angry, weren't you? Like almost everyone. And it struck me that of all the white people they called, like they called a teenage Black girl and he asked her about being angry.
Mhm.
They called a white girl who was also a teenager at the time. He didn't even go up to ask her in cross-examination. He didn't even ask her in cross-examination. And her testimony, was not good for his client, but he didn't cross-examine her. And so for me, it goes back to the idea that Black people are angry, they're dangerous, they're violent, and their anger makes them violent. So if you can convince the jury, at least one white juror, that these Black people were so angry they made me do this, and that's why I reacted the way I reacted, then they get one person who's not sure, who says that prosecution did not meet the burden, that it was not beyond a reasonable doubt. I have some doubt. And it goes right back to how Black people are portrayed in this country and what caused George Floyd's death. As you said, the nonchalance, the hand in the pocket, the looking comfortable and calm. The only time he moved was to take out his mace, trying to mace the crowd, the little bitty crowd of mainly young people. And that for me, it sort of adds to the trauma of what happened to George Floyd, to Mr. Floyd, and adds to the trauma of watching it again, right? Even today, they replay some of those videos. Like every day, they're replaying some of that same video.
Mhm.
And, but the fact that they're portraying Black people in that light, and knowing that it's not done lightly, and it's not done just by happenstance. It's done because he's aware of what society is like. He's aware of what is acceptable as far as the perception of Black people is. And so it brings me right back to the fact that, okay, this trial is to figure out whether we will convict Chauvin, but at the same time, they're putting Black people on trial. They're putting George Floyd on trial. And for me, it just seemed like that adds to the trauma.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a case of humanizing versus dehumanizing, right? And the defense is dehumanizing. So this idea that they would be angry somehow, I'm not even, the fact that being angry would be a harm to the prosecution's case is the dehumanization. Why should they be okay? Like the fact that Derek Chauvin was okay is actually what's problematic. The fact that they were upset is actually normal. When we think about human affect, the way humans should respond to external stimuli of other human beings or like life, you should be upset if you're watching someone be harmed, right? Their voices should get louder. They should get more anxious. They should sound more pressure. Their volume should go up. They should sound more alarmed. Like that is not an abnormal human response to watching another human be harmed, right? And he's trying to dehumanize them by using that as a tactic, right? So that he's counting on that somebody in the jury also doesn't see Black people as human, and stripping them from the ability to have emotions, right? Especially about another person who looks like them in this country, right? So he's definitely playing on that, even on the state with the other officers. And I think actually about the officers who are Black. So interestingly enough, which I don't think I ever would have thought, Minneapolis has a lot of Black administrators in the police force. So, right, the chief, the detective, the one who did the internal affairs investigation testified today were visibly uncomfortable, like visibly uncomfortable. And the white male EMT, like you said, he was clearly the one with the red hair, I forget his name, who was like, anybody can do CPR. Like, he was like, who would you want to help? He was like, anybody who was willing to help. Like, because this guy wasn't willing to help, right? He didn't pick up or like nitpick on his clear irritation and his clear kind of like agitation with the attorney. He didn't touch it, right? But it's about dehumanizing us. And the prosecution keeps trying to humanize him and humanize us. So it's this idea of like, race is in fact the thing, because the dehumanization of Black men is the standard. And so the prosecution is trying to humanize George Floyd, because if the jury sees him as human, then it is obvious what Derek Chauvin is murder, right? But if they just see him as a Black guy, which in America is synonymous with not human, maybe it's not murder. Maybe he did it to himself. Maybe he said, I got too many drugs in me, which is not, nobody can make out what he said. But the defense has presented it as that's what he said. And so it's something.
He didn't just say he had too much drugs in him. He said he ate too much drugs.
Oh, yeah, I ate too many drugs.
I don't know. I've never heard of anybody say, I ate too much drugs or I ate a drug. You eat drugs?
You take drugs, you pop pills, you do these things, but people usually eat drugs.
Eat drugs.
Even if you ate an edible, you won't say I ate too many drugs. But
I took
I had
something, but and that tells you, somebody was saying it to me, that people would want to hear what they want to hear, right? So, you know, to hear that from that didn't even make any sense, but that's what you want to hear. So that's what you do here.
Right. But so here's the thing, like I said, as a defense attorney, he's doing what he's supposed to do, right? The sadness is that it is not something that is applied across the board, right? It's like, I'm not even mad at him for defending his client. That's what he's supposed to do. It's the defense that he has that he can use that's upsetting, right? The fact that he can use the very Blackness as itself as a defense, that Black people are angry, that we are attacking, that we are aggressive, and therefore Derek Chauvin was always in danger. When he made contact with George Floyd, he was in danger. Once he got him on the ground, he was in danger from the other Black people who were standing around. Like, he's always in danger because he's been surrounded by Black people. So all the Black contact he made put him in danger. So he had no other choice than to kill and eliminate the danger, which is why he's going to pepper spray a 9-year-old and a 16-year-old, because he was in danger, even though the cops outnumbered them. It's 3 police officers, 1 quote unquote suspect, and 1 police officer is akin to like 5 people when you think about power structure, that when there's 1 police officer present, he can at least got control over 5 people in space. So it's 3 of y'all. 3 of y'all have control over about 15 people at least.
And weaponized.
You were just standing there and nobody even stepped off the sidewalk. And as soon as you told them and they thought they got a little too much, you told them to back up and they did. You didn't even move, Officer Tao. You just stood there. So it's more of the fact that he has the defense that's problematic than the fact that he's using it because he's a defense attorney. But the fact that that is a defense,
Well,
the blackness is his defense for Derek Chauvin. That is the traumatizing part.
Well, he's a defense attorney, and yeah, you should make your defense, but you do your defense based on the facts and the law. And it's sort of this, as an attorney, I can say that yes, you should use any means that you could possibly use to win your case. But it says a lot about you as a human being when you use something like that, when you're dehumanizing a whole group of people. Because this is where always for me, the thing comes in where people say, well, I'm just doing my job. No, you're not just doing your job. No, you're not just doing your job. Because there's a right way to do your job and there's just a foul way to do your job. And you can still do your job and fight for your client without at the same time stomping on somebody else and destroying them. There are always ways of doing it. But the fact that he knows that the dehumanization of Black people is an actual thing that would work says a lot about him as a person. Says a lot about him as a person. And the fact that he knows that he's going to use it says a lot about him as a person. So for me, I don't have any understanding, and it's not understandable for me. He, as an attorney, there are other ways to do it. If you wanted to just show that he might be bothered by it, then you just make the argument that, you know, he may be distracted by a lot of noise and a lot of people and so on and so forth. But to narrow it down to anger, which you know is a trigger point for white America when it comes to Black people.
Yeah, but who's the indictment on? Like, I almost feel like that's just not even a fair indictment on him because the fact, again, he could just say the people are yelling and he wouldn't be lying, right? But who the fact that a juror would read that as something that is that and attribute that to be bigger than what it actually is an indictment on our society.
That too, exactly.
Because he literally is just saying, well, when people are yelling and screaming at you, right, it's going to make you nervous or scared. Now, we all know it's coded because of who the people in the audience look like and who he was referencing. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it is coded language is an indictment on society.
But it's not just coded, right? Because he made a point of only addressing it to Black people.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's coded language because he didn't say it explicitly, but it's coded in the sense of directing the anger that way and using that language. Like, we know saying it to Don Williams, like, did you call him a fucking bum? And he was like, yes, I did. Right? So it's,
you gonna beat him up? He said yes, and he turned and looked at
he's turned and I meant it.
He left to look at Chauvin and go, and I meant it. Like, would have.
So,
I could have.
You know, it's really an indictment on society that means more than what it should. Because it should just be in defense that he was distracted, he was nervous, right? Yes. But the fact that it's magnified that much more because the audience members were mostly Black, that is an indictment on society.
And I guess for him, he figures there's nothing in those videos or those pictures of Chauvin that makes him look.
Oh yeah, he got nothing. He's literally grasping at straws.
Makes him nervous.
Like he's literally grasping at straws. Like to me, he's not I wouldn't have taken the case because I like to win. And I'd have been like, oh no, you're not gonna have me out there looking stupid. Because this, I'm not touching it. Like, I'm not touching it.
I appreciate all the officers, including the chief of police.
Oh yeah, they're not going. They're not with it at all.
And this is my thing. I felt as if a lot of them were sort of saying, you're not taking us down with you. This was just egregious. Like, it was just egregious. Like, there's no other term for it, just egregious. And it was so bad that even the protection that they normally have, no one could bring themselves to provide that protection. And that says a lot. That says a lot, because the blue wall is hard as I don't know what.
It sure is. I mean,
Like,
how sick is this? You have to call the people that you are afraid of on the people you are afraid of.
oh my
Because who
God.
else you gonna call? They call the police on the police because
Is it
there's
crazy?
nobody else to call.
Isn't that crazy? Like a
So maybe
dispatch,
we catch another one. Maybe we'll catch a good one because this one's not it. He's not listening.
a dispatcher,
Who
dispatcher.
can't hear what's going on? Who's watching is like something is amiss.
They don't look right. That
Some
doesn't look right.
like the point that she thought that the screen had froze.
Yeah. It tells you a lot, doesn't it? That's
Yeah.
how bad it was.
You know
That's
what? You know what's the most irritating part of the trial for me? And I just want to be like, give me that. Is Derek Chauvin's always taking notes. I want to snatch. What are you writing? Like, what are you writing? What are you writing? I don't understand what you're writing. Like, stop writing.
Chuma said
What
he's
are you
not
writing?
Chuma said he's not writing anything. Chuma said he's not writing anything. He just wants to look like he's doing something. He's like he's not writing anything.
I want to snatch that notebook every time they pan the camera over there and he's writing. I'm like, give me that legal pad. What are you writing? What are you writing? What could you possibly writing on this paper?
That's what he's doing the whole time. And it's just like, I mean, granted, right? You want, as an attorney, when you're with your client in a trial, you give them a notepad so they can write something that they want you to know. But the testimonies that were going on, what could you say about how the person was feeling? What could you write about what happened that's not in the video? I mean, the questions were about what did you see in this video? Like the evidence is there in front of everybody. It's not, oh, that wasn't true. That didn't happen like that. No, we were at this car lot talking. No, at 5 o'clock, I wasn't, those are the kind of things, you can kind of be like, you want the person to give you as the witness is testifying, but not in this case. But you're right. That is annoying. That is very.
When I say would push me over the edge, I'd be want to snatch it out of his hand. Give me this notepad.
So let me ask you, what do you think? How do you think people will handle if this thing turns out either the lowest charge, either it's the lowest charge or none at all? How do you think?
Know. So because we are on the other side of the pandemic, I don't know. Because I think part of the fire that happened is because we were stuck home and forced to watch what happened. There was no going to work to be able to act like it didn't happen, to ignore it and kind of like go on with your daily life, like what happened with Ahmaud Arbery. His was in February, but when his mother was screaming on top of her lungs about somebody, they killed her son, and nobody was really listening because we were still moving around. And then we got put on lockdown. And this happened, and we had no choice but to eat it because we were being inundated with it and we couldn't go anywhere. Now we're in the middle of getting vaccines. People are dying to go back outside and go back to their quote unquote regular lives and be able to see their family members again and do all these things. I feel like it's going to be extreme. It's either the cities will burn or nothing will happen. Like, I don't think it'll be a middle. I think either cities will burn or people will be so despondent that they just won't do anything, because that is also a traumatic response, is dissociation, and to just separate. And Black people are really good at dissociating, because if we weren't, we would never get anything done. Like, we would literally get nothing done. If we attended to every racist act, micro or macro aggression that happens to us in our daily lives, we literally would get nothing done. So we dissociate. We ignore things, pretend it didn't happen, act like we didn't hear it, decide that it's not worth it, whatever. We dissociate on a regular basis. We dissociate from what goes on in society, because every time somebody reports, like what you just reported about in Tacoma Park, like if we took that information in from the other 49 states that live in, like that's just, we wouldn't be able to do anything. And you just feel like a perpetual victim all the time. And so we're really good at dissociating. So that's going to be one of two trauma responses. You're either going to dissociate, or the cities this country will burn. Burn. Because the difference is a little bit now is that the white people are mad too. White people mad too. So when white people get mad too, it's not okay. So I think, but also where we are in our government now, where the Democrats are back in office, and I know you're a Democrat, sister, and I love you, but Democrats are like lax. So now that people are back in this little lull because Joe Biden is president now, we don't have to hear the stupidity of Donald Trump no more. The news is boring. It's not all inflammatory anymore. It's pretty dry. He's on there talking about infrastructure and $2 trillion. We're back to kind of like the usual standard of those kinds of things that you really not paying attention to, right? So we're back into low. The most exciting thing maybe is if he was signed, forgive student loans. There's nothing cracking it from the White House right now. That's like fanfare. That got people all worked up. So the Georgia voting laws, well, people are a little bit, people aren't really worked up about it. So we're in a space where people are like, we can finally breathe again. We're not under the thumb of El Stupido. So now people aren't as charged as they were a year ago because we were under the thumb of El Stupido. People were dying. The economy was tanking. We didn't know what was going on. And it was just gasoline on a already simmering embers. But now, you're gonna put some water on the embers. 20% of the population is vaccinated. People are getting vaccinated like this. People are starting to be able to travel again. And it's easy to forget about us again. And it'll just all go to the back burner. So.
Well, I'm hoping that what I experienced this last few years of the coalitions and the discussions that were happening that people didn't realize was happening, and people were still sort of not sure, because there were a lot of people who were not sure that we were going to win this election at all, because you still saw what was happening. You still saw what was happening. Still appeared that at least half of the country was like gone. And it seemed like,
if we're being honest though, it was half the country. Like, it just so happens that they were able to flip. And we barely got Georgia. It wasn't like it wasn't no landslide. It was barely got Georgia to flip that thing. And but for the pandemic, Donald J. Trump would be president again. That much I can guarantee you.
But this is what I mean, right? So what was happening outside of the mainstream, regular folks, what people didn't see in what I call our political bubbles, because a lot of people are not in it, right? People have their lives to live, but there were all these coalition buildings happening. There's a lot of coalition building happening. And one of the things that I think happened during the 4 years of hell with the former guy was that he made people who maybe otherwise would not have been so tight become tight. He made groups who otherwise, people used to kind of push you against each other, even though, made those people start thinking to themselves, okay, this dude looks like he's against all of us. So, and if he remains in office, we are like done for, right? So that's one thing I think that sort of happened. And there's all this building of coalitions. And a lot of those coalitions did not break up. Even though he lost, even though we won the White House, a lot of those coalitions did not break up. And what I'm seeing, I'm hoping it continues and the conversations continue to be what they are, because they're similar to what happened before and during the 2020 election. And if that maintains, I can see us doing better. And the fact that they are literally going after almost every person of color is just, it's like there's no,
Right. And I hear that, and I think the coalition will continue to build and do the work in that way. I'm talking about how the people will respond, because it was the people who were in the streets setting police cars on fires, and it wasn't the coalitions, right? Yeah. So I'm talking about the people. How will the people respond? What will this do to the people? for the trial to not go the way we all know it should, because we all watch this man get killed on the television.
Yeah, yeah, I don't,
That's what I'm concerned about. How will it affect the people? What will I tell my nephews who had to watch it over and over and over again? What will I tell them? What will I tell Amir, who is about fairness and justice, and he's about it? What will I say to him? What will his mother, who is a judge, say to him about how the justice system works? When every day for the principle of the whole summer, every time I got a break from something, they come upstairs, their dad is watching the news every day, every day, every day. And something that clear as a day that a child can see and be like, a 9-year-old is able to pick up on nonverbal. And she's like, he looked angry. How do you know? Because he just looked that way, because she understands emotional social cues. And he did not look like a very nice person. He did not look like he was very, very nice at the time. As he was killing them.
Isn't that, I mean, that just, it hits you somewhere in your heart, in your soul, for a 9-year-old to say that.
If you see the 9-year-old as a child, right? And like every time I watch, literally every time I watch it, I just keep replaying that scene in A Time to Kill, when Matthew McConaughey did his closing statement, and he had all the jurors close their eyes, and he told all the gruesome details. And he was like, "Now imagine she was white." Right. Baby, I was like, oh. Even though I've seen the movie nearly 17,000 times, every time I'd be like, every time.
It's true.
Now imagine she was white.
It's true.
Same thing.
Same thing. But they don't, right? People don't. So, but yeah, this has been a really hard time, and unfortunately it's not over.
Nope.
We are going to have these conversations over and over and over. I've been reading a little bit more about what happened over here in Tacoma Park, and this is an off-duty officer. An off-duty officer shot and killed 2 Black men because they stole a car. It's now a death sentence to steal a car. And he is a Pentagon officer, mind you. Off-duty Pentagon officer. Shot and killed 2 Black men.
Meanwhile, folks driving into the Capitol barricades.
And they're fine. And
folks don't storm the Capitol. A Pentagon officer sitting, killing police officers, threatening police officers, all got legislators under tables, and they at the house talking about they vegan and they have dietary restrictions.
And then here we had a little baby, 5 or 6 years old. He left campus. They called the police to go find him. I've not yet to be able to watch that whole video. The things they were saying to that baby, the screams from that baby, because he's a baby. He's a baby. He's 5, 6 years old. He's a baby. And both officers, or at least the one I saw, is a Black woman. And I've tried to explain to people many times, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have more Black people in the force. That's not what I'm saying at all. So people better not misunderstand. That is not what I'm saying. It's the culture within law enforcement that has criminalized this skin, has criminalized Blackness, has said even a baby is grown, has said a little boy with a toy gun, Tamir Rice, you can shoot and kill him before you've even stopped your car.
Drive-by shooting. It was a drive-by shooting.
Drive-by shooting, right? Because the system was couched and created to see us as less than. How do you then
it's
not
even less than? It's not human. Because the only way you can enslave someone for centuries is to make them not human. The only way that you can give someone to suckle your child The only way someone can suckle you, be the person who suckled you, actually, and you grow up and enslave them, the only way to be able to do that is to make them not human. That even though that you were suckled on her breast, it wasn't a human breast. It was just a bottle that was attached to something soft and warm. Because that's the only way you can explain the way that enslavement worked and the way that white people engaged, that the enslavers engaged with the enslaved. Like, and then after it was over, the way they engage with their domestic workers and the way they engage with us now in the workplace, how they treat Black women in the workplace, how they treat Black men in the workplace, that we are laborers. We are there to be burden bearers because we are still mules. And mules bear burdens. That's what mule and oxen do. They're burden bearers. And so that's how they treat us, because that's the only way you can continue to do these things. Only way you can look at the child that you already shot, Tamir Rice, and call in 19 or 20-year-old male. You mean the 12-year-old with a unibrow? That's who you thought was 19 or 20? When I look at 19 or 20-year-olds right now, I be thinking they 12. So I'm trying to figure out how you thought the 12-year-old was 20. I sat in on Florida State's Black Student Union debates yesterday. They looked like they was 14 to me. And those people was 20 and 21 years old. And I was like, oh, okay, so cute. So I'm trying to figure out how you thought the 12-year-old was 20 when I'm looking at 20-year-olds and think that they're 15 years old.
Well, you should hear the way they spoke to this 5-6-year-old child.
That's okay.
Like my heart was breaking. Like I keep saying I'm going to write something about it, and I've not been able to bring myself to really look at the
anti-Blackness is a thing. So Black people also are anti-Black.
Very, very.
That's a discussion for another day that nobody's ready for, but we're also anti-Black.
That is a conversation that I'm actually working on having an entire series from Black people and all these different communities, including communities of color, how deep anti-Blackness is within societies. And
there's two different kinds of anti-Blackness. There's anti-Blackness, and then there's anti-Black Americanness. There's a special kind of hate reserved in the world for Black Americans. But we're not going to talk about that right now either.
That's and I say that all the time. And a friend of mine, we're having this conversation about what was done in this country to basically have Black Americans be separated from everyone, whether you're Black from wherever else in the world, whether you're Asian, whether you're Latino, Latinx, whether you are whatever, Native American, Black people, Black Americans. The system was set up in such a way that you are made to be by yourself. And everything was laid to keep you separated, even from those who look like you. But that's another conversation. That is so deep, it's crazy. Like the whole idea of white supremacy is sort of in America anyway. But this conversation, I think, we'll probably have to revisit, because I want to be able to have conversations about Black trauma, but I want to also, have you maybe tell us how we can sort of plan, if you're able to, how we can sort of plan for what's to come, what might come, right? And how we can possibly and conceivably deal in some way, in some fashion, with what's happening now, and what may come at the end of this trial.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, because I think we're gonna need it. We're gonna need
yeah, we are. I mean, this thing is a lot of it's being connected to your community.
Let's say for right now. So you can't tell us how to deal for later when whatever happens.
Being connected to community, right? Okay. There are lots of agencies and community that are holding healing circles.
Okay.
Spaces for us to connect with one another and talk through what's happening. They do breathing exercises. They help do visualization, right? Ways for us to engage in some preemptive coping and healing as a community in a collective way. Doing it with your families and your kids, right? Grounding yourself in what you know to be true in the moment and in your immediate circle, because again, the outside world can feel so daunting. And so you also need to be present with what's true for you in the moment. Like what's true for me in this moment is that, I have my kids. What's true for me in this moment is, I'm setting this goal and I'm working towards it, right? Ways to ground yourself in the here and now to help you not internalize everything that's going on around you, because it can feel like a squeeze, from the world, squeeze in your family, squeeze at your job, and we could just be out here feeling really, really squeezed. And so you want to do grounding, having rituals for yourself that you adhere to, set boundaries for yourself that you adhere to, boundaries at work, boundaries at home. How can you and your partner work together to create space for you all to talk, for you to be free, to engage in joy? Because Black people, we have joy, and it's okay to have joy. You can have joy and manage the world at the same time, but we have to prioritize joy. We can't allow ourselves to get sucked into the dehumanization of us. So you have to humanize yourself. That's how you liberate yourself, is to humanize yourself, regardless of how the world tries to dehumanize us. You maintain your humanity and you do the work to maintain your humanity. That means go to therapy if you need to. That means, you seek your religious leader if you need to. Whatever you need to do it. There's nothing wrong with any of it. And you can do them all. You can go to the therapist. You can see your pastor, your imam, your rabbi. You can, establish a morning routine. You can listen to podcasts. You can do a meditation. You can do all of those things at the same time. It is not an either or. It is a menu of things for you to choose from in deciding what you need on that day. Journal. People think that you have to be like a special kind of writer. Like, I'm not a writer, so I don't journal. It's your thoughts and you're talking to yourself. You're not trying to win a Pulitzer. So just write, or record yourself, dictate to yourself, and keep them. Write letters to your children. What are your dreams and aspirations for them? Tell them how much you love them in a letter. Create an email account for them and write them letters. Do things that connect you to the people who love you and connect you to your present day and your present and immediate surroundings, so you can stay grounded and not allow yourself to get like squeezed from the outside, because we'll burst.
Thank you. Wow, that's good. That is so great. So on our fireside chat, we like to always end it on a good note because we talk about heavy things most of the time. Mm-hmm. So want to be able to ask you, what was something good that happened this week or lately that you would want to share with us that was good?
I don't know. I feel like my life in general is good. I don't have, really complaints, because like my daddy said, no one listens anyway. So I generally don't harp on my complaints, but just the fact that I'm free and I claim my freedom and my humanity at all times. And I refuse to let anybody take my humanity from me. And that I have the privilege of saying that I'm free and meaning it. I'm not free-ish. I'm not kind of free. I'm free, full stop. But yeah, good thing that happened to me is that I got to do my morning routine. I have a morning routine. I have an app that I use in the morning. I do my meditation. I write in my journal. I read my Bible, and I'm getting to do the work that I love every single day. So that's a good thing that happens for me. And I bought some Ferrero Rocher, and I'm going to eat it, and it's going to be good.
You bought who?
Ferrero Rocher. Oh. The ice, the chocolate. Sure did.
Oh my God. Love it. Love it.
And I'm going to a cabin in the woods in Mexico on this weekend. So I'm excited about going to Mazatlan. So.
Oh, I know somebody who's there.
Oh, cool.
In the mountains.
Yeah. Why do they live there?
Coastal.
It's not coastal. Mm-mm.
Same place, but what's it called again?
Mazatlan.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm saying it wrong.
No, she's there from a classmate from law school. She just posted about it. And Yeah, it looked beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. I'm looking forward to it. Being a cabin, I'm going to the waterfall.
Ooh, look at
It's
you.
gonna be great.
Be careful, be safe.
Oh my, I am. I like my life. Listen, self-preservation is number one. You don't worry about me staying alive. That's always the goal. Hello. And uninjured.
Okay, people, just so you don't know, I'm the overbearing big sister. It's what I do. It's what I've done for her entire life. So for over 40 years, almost.
Who's 40? You tried it. I'm 38. It's about over 40 years. You better get out of here.
That's what I said, almost.
You said I just said over 40 years. I'm gonna say you play too much.
Almost.
Oh, okay.
Almost 40 years of her life.
Oh, okay.
Okay? You feel better?
I do. I thought you said over. I was about to say, wait a minute, slow me down.
You don't even look 38. So what you talking about? Them little kids too.
Exactly. So don't make me 40. I'm out here. Look. I'm 38. Okay. Hold on my little 30s for as long as I can.
In case for those who are watching who don't know, she's my baby sister and she's always been mine. Really. Like she slept in my room, but that's a different story altogether. So anyway, so for me, one of the things that's really great happened to me, I was able to get her to get on the show with me tonight and have this convo instead of me talking to myself and looking at y'all on the screen. So this was really great. I had a really great day yesterday because I went out for about an hour running, walking, jogging. You know, that thing you do when you think you can run, but your back ain't saying it. And
your knees say have a seat. Got it.
But I was able to burn 535 calories according to this watch.
That's a great job. That's a lot of calories.
Yeah. So in a day,
you do that 7 times a week. That's a pound. That's 3,500 calories
in a day, though. I mean, yeah, 535 in a day, not the hour. In the activity. So the activity was an hour plus other stuff. But in a day, I burned about 1,300 calories, 1,100, something like that, 1,300 calories, according to this thing. But that was a really good day, and I was really glad. And I'm hoping to repeat it. Today was a busy day, but it has been a great, great, great time. And I was so happy to be here with my sis and introduce her greatness to all of you. And this is what she does. And if anyone is watching who wants this brilliance, let moi know. And moi will, do the connection. Okay, this is what she does. And she even has entire programs. Like she has, tell me about your, oh yeah, tell me about your program.
It's almost 8 o'clock. It's a curriculum deconstructing stereotypical roles of Black men to help Black boys build positive identity and positive masculinity.
Because I didn't even think about that. But yeah, that's what she does. And if I have anything, I'm going to share with you all later so y'all can understand what it is. Okay? So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We are ending on a positive note, on a beautiful note, and we love you. And I will see you again on Wednesday. And JoJo, we love you. Miss you. Miss you. But we'll see her on Wednesday on the 14th with Robin from Georgia. And we're going to talk about this Jim Crow 2.0. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for allowing us in your life, in your living room, in your dining room, wherever it is you're watching this. And like JoJo likes to say, wherever you are with your laptop. Thank you very much and appreciate you. And we'll see you next week.